Hi, welcome to Tux TV. I'm your host, Jimmy Tux. And
it was an abortion. An abortion, Michael. Just like our marriage is an abortion. Something that's unholy and evil.
welcome to Tux TV. Today I'm going to do a little review of a review and maybe even touch on, if I have time, another review, but we'll see. We'll see. So welcome to Tux TV. And been interested in Gurr. Maybe, just maybe, he's plotting some sort of evil maniacal, because you know how Gurr is. He is using us, all of us. I can see it now, just like God. So that's hence the hot dog. He is using us like a hot god. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Let's do the intro. All right. So here's what I wanted to touch on first. I wanted to show my sliver of evidence for God. Mike Winger seems to think that Mr. Dawkins here is wrong on something.
Case of God, there is not a tiny shred of evidence for the existence of any kind of God.
This is one of my favorite things to look at evidentially. One of the puzzle pieces of the...
So, not a shred of evidence. Not one shred of evidence.
The prophecy of the Messiah that...
The prophecy of the Messiah.
People miss out on is the Gentile inclusion.
So the Gentile inclusion. So we're going to have Gentile inclusion. And that means... that's a sliver of evidence.
Into faith in Yahweh, the God of Israel.
Now, faith in Yahweh. Notice how he switched that up. Shred of evidence, but the faith in Yahweh. Faith is not evidence. And one of the things that we're going to touch on Gurr's video here is that there is this God. Now, some people believe that this God, that this Bible came from God, that there's a shred of evidence of God because there's prophecy written into a book that was human written. So the preface of this show is basically that there's no sliver of evidence. Somebody manufactured that sliver of evidence, and it just doesn't exist. But we all have to pretend as Christians that we believe it's true because we accept it on faith.
Now this blows my mind when I think about this. Text, we know these passages were written before Jesus ever showed up.
Okay. Not one of those texts say specifically, Jesus is going to come. No, it's generic. It's just labeled as a Messiah. And if you ask Jews, they say, hey, that Jesus guy isn't our Messiah. We think he may have been a prophet, but he wasn't our Messiah.
Showed up. And they talk in the Old Testament repeatedly about this person who is this messianic figure who causes the Gentile world to turn to and believe in the Yahweh, the God of Israel.
Look at that. It's drowning in whatever that is.
This is a profound prediction about the world being changed. And how is it going to happen? Well, Psalm 22 talks about how the Gentiles will turn to the God of Israel because of what this suffering servant does, which looks exactly like the crucifixion of Jesus.
Exactly.
Jesus. There's like 16.
By the way, there's plenty of debunks of this. I learned about the first debunks from a guy called the Biblical Skeptic. And he breaks down, he's probably got like 40 hours on Daniel, on Isaiah, basically debunking that they're talking about Jesus.
Corresponding pieces that fit the crucifixion of Jesus in Psalm 22.
In the case of God.
All right. So, got that out of the way. Now what are we going to talk about? So, let's go with my friend here. I didn't organize before I jumped on here. Where is my... Here it is. Found it. Call search.
like it at all, especially this guy. He runs the YouTube channel The Christian Apologist. Will he miss all the points I made and make a complete fool of himself? Let's find out.
No, I don't think he makes a fool of himself.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have another video from our atheist friend Germania. See, now in this video, he's trying to say that since the road to hell is broad and many will go, and the other to heaven is narrow and only a few will make it, why are Christians pro-life instead of pro-choice, since the killing of aborted babies only guarantees their salvation?
Yeah.
Let us respond to this. Stay tuned.
I'll link the video of mine that he's responding to in the description box below. But here's the summary. According to Christianity, babies are sinless, or they're at least not held accountable for sin. When a baby dies, their soul goes to heaven, or at least avoids eternal suffering. Any human that reaches adulthood without any mental issues or brain damage is at risk of eternal suffering unless they become a Christian. Therefore, killing babies and children would be the best thing to do for their soul's eternal well-being, since it would guarantee they go to heaven and avoid eternal suffering. Obviously, I'm not advocating for the murder of children, but if Christianity is true, the
So obviously, Gur is not saying that we dash all the children against the rocks. Certainly not like it is stated as such. And we'll touch on that a little later in the video.
logical conclusion of guaranteeing a human going to heaven is quite simple. They have to die before they reach the age of accountability. This is the morbid corner Christians have backed themselves into, and they don't even realize it.
So our atheist friend at Germania has made a video on YouTube labeled a question.
I've been warned that this might be copyrighted music, and now that I hear it in my headphones, it sounds a little different than I was listening to it on AirPods. So forgive me, I might have to stop this more often than I like.
For pro-life Christians atheists. Now in this video he talks about the Bible saying that many will go to hell and a few will make it to heaven.
So now this is, of course, it's prefaced with Christians are backed into a corner.
Heaven basically is what he's trying to say in a nutshell. Now his claim is that Christians shouldn't be pro-life but pro-choice, since it does guarantee the baby.
Okay. So if he's going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as let's do that right there.
Salvation.
What I'm saying is, according to Christianity, children and babies are not at risk of eternal suffering. So if they die, they are guaranteed heaven. But if they live into adulthood, they are at risk of hell, which means terminating pregnancies is a massive win for the soul of the fetus.
His question is stated like this, and I quote, "If a soul is born into this world, are the odds of it going to hell greater than..."
So something I just noticed here is he's trying to switch the language here from born and soul, and confuse the two, conflate the two.
The odds of it going to heaven, end quote. He proceeds to say that he wants the Christian's opinion on all these kinds of matters.
Yeah, we do. All right. Something tells me that he's purposely doing this music to control the narrative. Huh. Let's fast forward to him.
Usually when Christians agree with an atheist, there's almost always mental gymnastics that follow.
But he then says, statistically speaking, since the odds of a person going to hell is greater than going to heaven, would it not be better for the baby to be murdered?
Yes. The answer would be yes. If you're a Christian, the answer is yes. And we've had several Christian mothers, fathers, who have done such a thing. I very much remember a huge case when I was a kid down in Texas that was advertised as such.
And to guarantee their salvation, rather than to live and the person grew up and choose either to follow Jesus or not.
I'm only stopping this because of the
not
music.
to follow Jesus, risking going to hell. Okay, now first off, let me just get this straight.
I wonder if I can just add my own music here. Drown some of us, all of us out.
Sir, is what you're claiming is that your opinion is if the Bible is true, it's better to kill innocent
Murder on a night just like tonight.
children and human beings rather than allowing them to live so that way they can either choose to follow Christ or choose not to.
Ooh, that's a bingo.
So right off the
Oh my goodness, that's funny. All right, I'm going to have to dismiss what he's saying. I don't remember this music being in here when I was listening in my earbuds.
I see no self-defeating claim on my end, buddy boy. So let me walk you through this. Let's say you have a child, and you being the true Christian that you are, know full well that once your child becomes an adult, they will be at risk of going to hell, where they will suffer forever. But if your child dies before becoming an adult, you know they are guaranteed to go to heaven.
So a quote here, enter through the narrow gate, the wide is the gate, and the broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate, and narrow is the road that leads to life, and only a few will find it. Now, if there are 2.3 billion Christians on the earth, if there's 1.7 billion Muslims on the earth, if there's approximately, I'm not even sure how many Jewish on the earth, what is defined as narrow and what is defined as wide? Statistically, an atheist, by this definition, has a better chance of getting, for our sheer numbers being low, if you break it down to its statistical category, likelihood.
With zero risk of going to hell. What I'm saying is, if Christianity is true, the death of children is the greatest thing that could possibly happen in regards to their soul's eternal well-being.
Correct. If Christianity is true, you automatically get a get into heaven free card. If there is a such thing as God, which I don't, there is a such thing as a reward, an untold treasure at the end of your life. If you didn't have an opportunity to fully live your life and make your own decisions, that decision was made for you. That decision was made for you whether or not it was the flood back in roughly 6,000 years ago, or whether it was today, whether it's tomorrow.
This isn't my logic, mind you. This is the logic of Christianity.
I mean, think about it. Your pro-choice ideology means, this is what it means, not giving all humans a choice.
Okay. So, I believe we've conflated, again, some variation of a description. Giving a human a choice is not the same as giving a attached to a uterine wall a choice. Whatever name you want to give, the life support system that is being provided by a human, the thing that is growing is not human. Will be a human given the life support.
Pro-choice, not giving all of a choice. Not all
It is giving all of a choice. The life support is giving the most choice.
humans deserve a choice, but you're pro-choice.
I never said
Yeah. See, that is a confusion of definitions and colloquial terms. Gur's here. Gur, you want to jump on?
that I was pro-choice in that video, but for the record, I am. And if I was a Christian, I'd definitely be pro-choice, because those potential human beings would probably end up in hell after living in the so-called evil world. They'd have to worry about the devil, God's trials and tribulations, human sinful nature, temptation, other religions, and so on. And all of these things are stacked against them getting into heaven. It's crazy to believe in all of this and still say,
God is great.
when he rigged the entire system.
I watched your entire video. In fact, I watched it many, many times. And no, No, sir, I do not see how your thought process
Tied up at the moment. You, as an atheist, murdering pro-choicer, you're tied up.
is a rational, logical one at all.
You know, Gur, I think you and I should sit down for a viewing of Silence of the Lambs. I think it would clarify a lot of things in this.
In fact, your claim breaks two laws of logic. The law of non-contradiction, which states P is not non-P, meaning that in your ideology, you can't claim to be pro-choice, yet say take away the baby's choice.
Okay. What is the definition of the baby in this context? Outside of the womb or inside of the womb? Life support? Non-life support? I know. I know. I have heard this many, many times. And as I told BS in the last time I was on with him, is in reference to eating these babies, I conscientiously object to eating the bovine veal just for BS. But as for chicken babies, I had chicken babies this morning, according to his definition. I had unfertilized chicken babies. So, you know, I don't feel that it was murder there, but I'm pretty sure that hen's choice was to sit on those eggs regardless of whether they were going to turn into chicken babies or not.
And it also breaks the law of excluded middle, which states it's either P or non-P. And in your case, you have to be either pro-choice or pro-life, but you can't be both.
Or I could be pro-heaven. I see no way.
Pro-heaven. I could be pro-heaven. I mean, that's conflating the definitions far less than, you know, obviously if he watched the video as many times as he says he did, the focus of this channel, or the focus of this video is it better to send somebody to heaven on purpose for any reason? But he seems to miss that point.
For you getting out of this conundrum. Besides, you already agreed with me.
I mean, that is true according to the Bible.
Going by Christian logic, many
That clip gets used and overused, and I love it.
adults go to hell, but children and infants don't.
James.
I legit don't see how you're not getting this, but I suspect that you actually do get it. You see how big brain.
James, you're welcome to jump on if you like.
I mean, what can I say? I put the grr in great. But I also think you hate agreeing with me. You know deep down inside, if Christianity is true, or at least your version of it, dead babies go to heaven, no questions asked. But if the same babies grow past the age of accountability, there is a risk of hell. A great risk of hell, might I add. To eliminate risk, abortion is the best option.
I mean, if you want to say you're for abortion, which, by the way, I mean, all you're really trying to say is that you're for murdering innocent babies, then make that statement.
No, I'm pro innocent babies avoiding hell. A dead baby is a saved baby. That's Christian logic, my dude, not mine.
But you can't argue that you're pro-choice and then turn around and say it's better to take away their choice if the Bible is true.
If the Bible is true, I'm for taking away
Everyone's free choice.
regardless of age. If Christianity is true, and I had the power to make
Yeah,
everyone
I'm not a
souls
free-
eternal first place, who's to say
Greater than hashtag greater. I like that.
drunk or having a bad day when he made
Oh.
hell? Who's to say?
I mean, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, if you're claiming the Bible is true, then you have to say that the Bible is all about choices. It's all about free will for all human beings.
No, the Bible makes it clear God doesn't like free will. In the Old Testament, you either followed God or he destroyed you, your town, or the entire world. In the New Testament, you either follow God or he throws you into the lake of fire. On top of that, according to the Bible, God predestines some people for honor and some for dishonor. He also hardens hearts and even sends strong delusions so that people will believe lies. See my video, Free Will, the Bible, and Atheism for more on
Great
that.
thumbnail. It's a great thumbnail. So, torturous little vixen.
But for the sake of argument, I'll agree with you. The Bible is all about free choice. Okay.
Free will. Free will.
Would you give your loved ones the free choice to douse themselves in gasoline while playing with matches? Of course not. But God does. So the free will nonsense is almost as equally sinister as no free will. Either way you slice it, God is either causing or allowing eternal harm.
And if you're making the statement
Yeah, that's a great visual. I like it. Jimmy
that
likes.
the Bible isn't true, then your stance is pro-choice, yet you're still claiming that the baby doesn't have a choice. So it doesn't matter which way you go in the matter, your claim is self-defeating.
I wouldn't give my children the choice to play in traffic. I definitely wouldn't give them the choice to go to hell. Unlike God, I'd care about their eternal well-being, and I'd make damn sure they wouldn't get damned for sure. Okay, everyone, pay close attention to what this guy says next.
Now let me ask you something.
Mm-hmm.
Let us just say a person named Steve, because I noticed in one of your other videos you like to use the name Steve. So we'll say in this video this guy's name is Steve.
So I like this analogy. I like the analogy that he used, and when I first started listening to this, I was reminded of a similar scenario of somebody who was brain dead. And I want him to go over his, and then I'm going to go over mine.
He's 26 years old. He's been an atheist his entire life, but he recently became a Christian. He recently became to know Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. But on that same day, he was in this horrible, horrible car accident when he was sent into a coma and he had to be placed on life support. Now think about this. Steve is no longer aware of his environment. He can't eat on his own. He can't breathe. He can't do anything. But the doctor does say that he has a 97% chance of making a full recovery and living a perfectly normal life. Now, let's just assume you're Steve's closest relative. The doctor says you can pull the plug if you want to.
Okay, let's pay attention to that. Closest relative gets the choice. Who gets the choice? The closest relative.
Germania.
Now, he wants Germania to be the closest relative in this thought experiment.
Now, according to you, you should pull that plug because you know that he accepted Christ right before the accident, and by pulling that plug, he will have a spot in heaven for all of eternity. Now, even though...
So, being heaven focused, yes, you get to choose. And you're going to touch on it very well in here in a moment, but I want to share this news report right here. Terri Schiavo case. If you don't remember it, about 20 years ago, there was a case that went all the way up to the Supreme Court.
We're going to take a closer look tonight at a man's fight over a decision to allow his incapacitated wife to die.
From 2003 to 2005,
Once again, I didn't realize there was this much music on it before.
one woman's story captivated the country,
Terri Schiavo.
spurring a national debate over
Shoot. I didn't realize there was music on this.
the right to die.
To deliberately starve her to death.
On the week of the 10th anniversary of her death, a look back at the defining moment.
Stopped.
When she finally...
Terri collapsed one morning in 1990. Her heart had stopped.
So the case was that she had gone into a coma. She was in a coma for an extended amount of time, went brain dead.
When she finally opened her eyes, doctors said she was not conscious.
I swear they put this dramatic music in just to put a copyright on it or something. Huh.
The next several months, she went from rehabilitation centers to hospitals and back again, each day getting occupational and physical
get to the good part. So she's brain dead.
After years of effort, Michael Schiavo agreed with doctors.
All right. This is the husband. He's been going through for years a conversation on whether or not she should stay on life support or he turns it off.
That there was no hope for recovery.
Terry has made the same movements, the same noises, the same sounds for 13 years.
13 years he's had to deal with this choice. 13 years. Something else other than her husband has been making the movements for her to be alive. The life support was provided by electronics, medical science, modern medical technologies.
Her parents felt otherwise.
All right. In the scenario that this gent was bringing to us, he's making it the closest relative. Now, who is the closest relative? Is it the husband or the mother? Well, now it's the husband. The husband gets to make the decision.
Please, please, please save my little girl.
So, please save my little girl. She's been in a coma for 13 years. She's been on life support provided by something other than the mother. Mind you, for 13 years. Her brain is not alive anymore. Her brain is dead.
The decision to end her life was debated in the courts and in the State House.
Who's going to look out for this girl's rights? We have to.
We don't make laws in this state based on...
This is going to be a copyright strike. I might as well just end this stream now. What the hell? That much music being poured into it.
Emotion.
Jeb Bush pushed to keep her alive.
The governor of Florida says a comatose woman will not be allowed to die. He will.
So now the governor's going to step in. The governor's going to step in. The parent is going to step in. But the closest relative is who? Somebody who's been emotionally wrecked for 13 years to make this decision. And everybody stuck their nose in it.
Order her feeding tube put back in.
But the courts overruled the Florida law.
Florida's Supreme Court struck down as unconstitutional a law passed.
It falls under fair use, but it'll be whack-a-mole copyright, which is not a fun game to play.
To keep a comatose woman, Terry Schiavo, alive.
Encouraging members of the U.S.
So who else is getting involved? Everybody's getting involved about somebody whose decision could have been made 13 years ago, in all honesty. But no, hung on. There's nothing to it. Now, after the fact,
Congress to take up the charge.
Congress has jumped into the case of a brain-damaged woman in Florida today.
This judge in Florida want to pull her feeding tube and let her starve for 2 weeks. That is barbaric.
A woman's life is at stake.
And even the president.
In extraordinary circumstances like this, it is wise to always err on the side of life.
There you go. The president has spoken. Everybody, including the mother, has spoken. The president, the Supreme Court, medical facilities, and their representatives, everyone. But we should err on the side of caution for Terry Schiavo. Somebody who's been in the position because of modern medical science. Now, because of that modern medical science, we live in a world where we know it's not God weaving children in the womb. We know it's not God that permits somebody to get pregnant in the first place. There's no moment in which we can distinguish between the Christian soul has been implemented into this child or not. But everybody wants to weigh in as if they are God. And now, this other gent wants Gurr to be God in his thought experiment. Where Mr. Schiavo clearly had to make the decision. He was the closest relative. Let's skip to this part here.
Was allowed to remove the feeding tube.
Terry Schiavo has died. The saga is over. The debate about life and death continues.
10 years later, we remember the woman that made the nation ask,
Who decides whether a person who cannot decide for themselves lives or dies?
So, who decides? If you're providing life support for something, not medical science, if a person is providing life for something, that is who decides. Not a Christian, not a politician. The advice of a medical facility and the concerns of their oath are what stand between a person providing life and not. Get the priest and the politician out of this decision. That is what the bald, old white guy says in front of a microphone and a camera and streams on a video. Is that simple? That's simple. Terry Schiavo was the decision of the husband because that was the closest relative. The closest relative of something that isn't even born yet. That is its creator. That makes the person culpable. I can't tell you that it's going to be easy, but I can tell you if a politician wants to impress upon, then it should be subject to the state being responsible for raising that child. And that doesn't happen. No, you're responsible. Doesn't matter the circumstances. They want to demand that it's theirs to make. And if they demand it's theirs to make, then it should be their choice. It should be their responsibility. I don't know anything about this stuff. I just know that soon as the media gets involved on Terry Schiavo, soon as the politicians get involved, soon as the courts get involved, soon as anybody other than the person that got to see to make the actual decision, it got drawn out for years. And a remembrance a decade later. I'm sorry, when you make an oath to a woman like I have, and it says till death do us part, and a medical science professional says some variation of brain dead, Terry Schiavo and the husband that made the decision should have filled his wife's wishes. It's that simple. Boil it down to its ultimate conclusion. And it's the same thing with not bearing a child. It's an instant decision. If it has some life regrets, you can't help that. But in the real life, in the real world, the only person with no drama is the person providing that decision and that life. That life doesn't start, in my opinion, until there's pretty much breathing. And if you want to say otherwise, then if the Christian can prove that there's a God, and there are such things as miscarriages and stillborns, I declare to you, God needs to go on trial. Because that is a massive murder that God has done. If by your definition, a soul is created the moment that there is something to abort, something to miscarry, something to reach to term and have stillborn. Hi, Spooky. All right, let's go back to our friend here.
Well, there's a 97% chance of a full recovery, Steve. By you choosing to allow him to live, you also know that there's a chance that he could revert back to his old ways and become an atheist again, which means he would be eternally separated from God, which is hell. Now, I don't have to ask, really, what you would do in this situation, because there's no need to respond. You've already responded in your videos, because according to you, pulling the plug on Steve is the most moral decision you could possibly ever.
Yeah. If heaven is the only focus, pull the plug immediately. If life is the focus, Gur, as the person who gets to decide, leave that decision to Gur. And only Gur. If Gur seeks your advice on how to do it, bring it to him. But sticking your God in that decision without evidence that there's a God, without a shred of evidence that there's a God, I'm sorry, your Christian view, until there's evidence of a heaven and there's evidence of a hell, doesn't mean a thing.
Ever made for him.
Bravo! You, sir, are correct. Well done. If Steve did recover, there would be a chance of him deconverting from Christianity later on in his life, which means there would be a chance of him going to hell when he dies sometime later after recovering from his coma. And I must reiterate, this isn't my logic, this is Christian logic. But now allow me to reimagine this hypothetical. In scenario 1, Steve is a Christian who is in a coma, and I decide not to pull the plug and he recovers. But years later, after watching videos from Dark Matter 2525 or Apologia, Steve starts questioning his faith. Eventually, he leaves Christianity. A few days later, he dies. Since he was no longer a Christian when he died, he ends up suffering in hell for all eternity. In scenario 2, I pulled the plug. Steve goes to heaven since he was a Christian. Had I not pulled the plug, it's possible scenario 1 would have happened. You see, by pulling the plug when Steve was a Christian, I guaranteed his place in heaven. No risky business. But I'll even go further. Let's say that it would only be a 0.001% chance of Steve leaving Christianity and going to hell. I would still pull the plug, because risking...
I didn't watch this. I didn't watch this before. I only listened to it in my earbud. Oh my. That is hilarious.
I would still pull the plug, because risking eternal suffering, even if the odds are so low they might as well be impossible, is still the safest choice. If you had to choose between the first two hypotheticals, which one would you prefer? In all honesty, Steve would be thanking me, knowing that, had I not pulled the plug, he would have eventually ended up in hell. But since I did pull the plug, he didn't have the chance to lose his faith.
I'm sorry you had to make that.
Savior, if you think about it.
And don't try to make the argument that babies are different because, oh, they can't think, they can't breathe on their own, they can't eat on their own, they can't do anything on their own. Because in the scenario I just gave, neither can Steve.
Yeah, that's a false equivalence. It's just not even close. Like, let me ask you this. Any single one of the males, because I don't know the female version of this, but any one of the males here, are you more proud of yourself after puberty or before puberty? I know this. I definitely enjoy myself a lot more after puberty. Definitely.
There's no way around this. The murdering of innocent babies is objectively wrong. I mean, if you can honestly say that by gathering all the children and babies under the age of accountability, putting them in the center of town, and murdering all of them to ensure their salvation is not an act of pure evil at the highest regards.
And here's the thing, and I'm going to let this run.
Then, sir, I hate to say it, but you need some serious help.
Of course, I would never do that. However, if Christianity is true and
I want to pause this. GeoSam reached out to me and sent me some videos, and I thank you very much for that. So subscribe to his channel, and he may do the same thing for you. I'm not sure what his motivation was. It was unprompted and uncommissioned. So if you're having a need to, Geo Sam, I appreciate it. I don't think I'm going to do that for Tux TV. However, I am probably, if I ever do the podcast, I am going to commission you for the podcast. So stand by for action.
Hell is real, you cannot get out of the fact that killing them would ensure that their souls would avoid going to hell. Whereas if I did kill them, some of them, maybe all of them, would grow up to be atheists, agnostics, or become subscribers of a different religion. Hell, maybe some of them would end up being Christians, but not
real Christians.
Even if they all became real Christians, though, had they lived, who cares? They'd be in heaven with their Lord and Savior without going through all the suffering God allows on this planet. So either way is a...
Again, I didn't watch the video. I listened to it. Let me full screen this. Oh, that didn't work either. Oh my goodness. That is hilarious. Yeah. Isn't that funny? Like that is the Christian mindset right there. I just find it that all these kids are God's children, and you as a human don't know what God has a plan for. So you better just let God do it. If God does it, it's okay. But if you do it, that's bad. That's bad. Yeah, I just don't find that...
Win-win.
The last thing I'm going to ask is this. In one video, you claim that God is immoral for all the killings like of the Canaanites and back in the Noah days and the flood in the Old Testament.
Yes.
That was immoral of God.
That was. Or God's fictional character, just to scare you into being straight.
But you're claiming it is moral for humans to kill other humans.
So, once again, he's conflated the difference between somebody who has a simple life support system, providing life for something else, and it's their decision and their decision to make, and calling them human, or that is a human and you now have to support it because God says so, or a Christian says so, or a politician says so.
Which is it? I mean, is it moral or is it immoral?
If Christianity is true, when God killed babies in the flood or the Canaanite babies, I would actually say that was a good thing because it meant those babies went straight to heaven.
Yeah. As long as heaven is the sole focus of your motivation to murder every child, that means what the Canaanites were doing. And the propaganda reason that the Israelites were permitted to go take over those Canaans and take their land and their everything. Well, then, guess what? Heaven for their other god, apparently, the Canaanite gods, wasn't good enough for the Israelites to back off. No. We gotta take care of this. We gotta take action. It reminds me of I saw in a bathroom stall during the Iraq War, or the start of the Iraq War, that Bush W started, that they were claiming, the administration said that they were bombing for peace. And on the bathroom stall, I saw bombing for peace is like fucking for virginity. And it's the same thing. You could take your storybook about gods, and you can take the propaganda and strip it away. Ultimately, somebody wanted something, used an invisible hero as their authority measure to say, this is real and legit. And not have to bear a conscience for having done such a thing. Lighten the PTSD that you have from murdering swaths of people and just say, well, God got to do it. It wasn't me. I did it for God.
If God didn't do that, they'd more than likely be just as
evil
as their parents were, which means they would have more than likely gone to hell. So,
Go
good
ahead.
job, God. You rescued those babies from eternal suffering by murdering them. Hallelujah. Alright, that's the end of this video. To the Christian apologist,
Subscribe to Gurmania.
and I hope you consider all the
Says he's not doing Gur streams
that your
anymore.
religion has. And just as a reminder, I don't condone killing children. Until next.
How come he couldn't say that with a straight face? Is this a concern? Do we need an intervention, Gur? Well, folks, let's be sure to like and subscribe. Let's hit the like button here. Bing! 67th. And be sure that you've clicked on the bell thingy. You'll get notifications. Dun, 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 dun. And be sure to leave a comment for the algorithm. Let's see. Gur, I made a review of the response that is really awful. Please forgive me. Exclamation. There we go. All right. Oh, let's see what BS wrote here. Serious note. His point, pro-choice boards, babies. Therefore, thereby reviewing your choice is absurd, was almost convincing until I remembered that babies don't choose to enter this life in the first place. Yep. All right. Well, it is time for Jimmy Tux to go outside and put up Christmas ornaments. It's supposed to be 50 degrees. Right now, it is 50 degrees exactly. I told the missus I would put them up when it reached 50 degrees. So, let's do a moment of Zen. I want to introduce you to this little guy. This week, there was a Clear the Shelters event here in Chicago. And there was a shelter that had one dog remaining. This happy little fella named Elvis. Elvis! Normally I have a video, but I couldn't find a video on it, so we just went with pictures from the Twitterverse and from WGN, a local Chicago. If you're unfamiliar with the Superstation. So this little guy was rescued by an Elvis impersonator, and he has a home now. And look at that. Look at that happy family. Look at that. So, folks, love your dog. Find a new dog. Help a. I have a rescue dog that has a smiling face just like this doggy all the time. And it's been a complete joy. So, if you have to make a nasty decision such as Terry Schiavo's husband had to make in this world, maybe you can bring a little joy to it, joy, happiness to a dog as well. Adopt not just doggies, but sometimes some of the folks out there who are either in the status of coming across our borders due to some of the violence and recklessness of humanity in South and Central America, or even the war-torn Palestine, Gaza Strip, and Ukraine right now. Human and humanity services, even in donation and adoption form, helps the world a bit. So I leave that as your moment of Zen, and bow tie bless to you all. Should I do? Nah, I'm not going to do any of those. we're going to skip Bloody Jesus and the Bowtie 8 and your free gift of salvation. We'll leave it on Elvis. Adopt what you can. Spread the love. That's the wrong tab.